And we are live for another episode of the Toehold MMA podcast. I'm your host, Dave. We got Ryan here, and we're here to break down the biggest event of the year, UFC 254, Khabib versus Gaethje. Ryan, how you doing today?
Not too bad. Can't complain. Just I'm not too crazy about this early start time when it comes to the fights tomorrow. I can't get behind it. I get why they did it, but I know
Yeah,
some people like it, but I hate it.
I want to say the last time Khabib fought too, when he fought Poirier over in Yas Island, it was another like early card. I think it was like a 10 or 11 o'clock card.
Was it?
I believe so. I remember that. I remember. I'm pretty sure every time he's fought over there, this is only the second time. I believe it was early as well, just
Yeah,
to, for Russia and
yeah. I mean,
every.
I get why they did it. I don't know. It segregates such a big part of your, fan base. And I mean, if you're on the West Coast, you're waking up at 7 a.m. It seems crazy that just for one fighter, basically, they're deciding to do this because none of their other events have they started early. So, but
I
it
think
is
it's
what it is.
yeah, it's partly because of that, partly because of just it's such a big fight. It's a pay-per-view. They want to have it everywhere, but in, but it's just remember for all of our subs. Remember, slate locks at 11 a.m. tomorrow. It's not normal 4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock slate locks. It's 11 a.m. in the morning. So make sure you're up. I'll be in the war room starting at early in the morning. My daughter wakes up at 5 o'clock, so I can be in the war room as early as 5 a.m. answering all your
Did they
questions.
move it back to 11? Because it was initially that it started at I
Uh,
thought 10 or 10:15 was the first
As
fight.
far as I know, is when I looked on Draftkings today, unless I was looking at the televised slate. Yeah, Draftkings has that as 11 a.m. Eastern time.
I thought UFC had it starting at 10:15. Let me double check that
I
real
think,
quick.
but they always do it early for all the like stupid reasons.
Yeah. So maybe the actual first fight starts at 11.
Yeah. But again, make sure you have your lineup set. I'll be up early in the morning for you West Coast people. You might want to lock in your lineups the night before. Obviously, we have alerts on our app that we get and send out notifications. So make sure you have your notifications on in case any fight drops off between as of when we're recording this on Friday night at 9 o'clock. And another thing, if you're watching this right now, throw some comments, in the chat. I'll try to answer them. We'll throw them up on the screen. And if you really want to, if you want to join the podcast, let us know, and I'll give you a link, and you can hop on with me and Ryan and talk fights for us for the night. We're going to be breaking down a little bit of everything. We're going to do DraftKings, we're going to do betting, predictions, everything tonight. It's a big card, so we're going to go all out with everything. Um, Also, if you haven't done so, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. It just helps us out, grow the channel, and make sure to subscribe. Um, but all right, Ryan, you ready to start breaking down some fights?
Yeah, let's break them down.
All right, first fight of the night, we got Yoel Alvarez 9,000 and Alexander Yakovlev at 7,200. I'm going to kick this one to you first, Ryan. What do you think of this fight?
Yeah, I know you're kind of a lot higher on Alkalov than or Yakolov than I am. I think that this is Alvarez's fight to lose. You know, yes, Yakolov has fought a lot of the well-known fighters recently. He's fought Usman, he's fought Maya, he's fought a couple other well-known fighters. But at the end of the day, he doesn't really do much for me at all. I mean, he lands 1.56 takedowns per fight, but that's basically about it. Guy lands less than 2 strikes per minute, absorbs almost 3 strikes per minute. And against a guy like Alvarez, you don't necessarily want to be on the ground with him. He has 15 wins via submission, so you don't want to be on the ground with Alvarez at all. Um, I just think that anywhere this fight goes, this is Alvarez's fight to lose. So I like actually when I'm not sure what the betting lines are now. I haven't looked at them in a little bit, but I know when I initially did look, I did like Alvarez to win. He was about negative 200 when I initially looked, so he's a little bit high in the juice, but I think that's a pretty safe bet, and I think he's pretty safe for GPP lineups. Um, Cash, I don't for his price, I probably wouldn't put him in cash. Yakovlev, I don't. I made 20 lineups today. I didn't have him in one of them.
I mean, Alvarez right now is a minus roughly like 165, 170-ish. But my analysis of the fight is that Alvarez is the better submission, has this better submission game, and you'll probably have the striking advantage. I mean, neither guy are good strikers. Alvarez is young. He's 26. He's improving every fight. But the problem I have with Alvarez, he has 15 submission wins, but he doesn't take down anybody. It just baffles me that he has so many submissions without getting people down. Like he has literally not a single takedown attempt in the UFC so far, but yet he has submission wins. Um, and that's what struggles with me in this fight because he could submit Yakovlev. I mean, Yakovlev is the better offensive wrestler. He's probably going to shoot for takedowns, but the problem with Yakovlev is that he could get submitted. He's been submitted 4 times in his career, but most of those were early on in his pro career. The last time he was submitted recently was Zach Cummings, and that was a few years ago. So I think he's pretty good. He's won against guys like Damian Maia and plenty of other fighters who have, obviously Damian Maia is probably the best, it's called submission artist there is in the UFC. So, to survive that for all 3 rounds, I think is pretty impressive. So I know Yakovlev knows how to defend a takedown. So I just feel like as DraftKings as a whole, it's probably not a fight you want to target in general because I don't see Alvarez getting the submission. I think it's going to be a struggle for him to get it. And at 9,000, I think it's just way too priced. Like if you want to be contrarian, knowing that he's going to be super low owned, throw him in a lineup or two. But I don't like him a ton for DraftKings. He's really just, to me, a secondary option for GPP. And Yakovlev, I mean, if he wins, it's going to be a low volume, low scoring affair. He's probably going to get takedowns, just hold Alvarez on the ground and just control him. And if he gets a win, it's obviously he'll pay off at 7.2K. But for the most part, I just don't like him a ton. He's more of a cash play because there's just no upside with him. He's not going to get a finish.
Yeah.
But
and for his price, to me, there's many other people in his price range that I would go for cash over him.
But the one bet I do like on this fight, I think I mentioned to Ryan actually earlier in the week. I think when I mentioned to Ryan, it was probably plus 140, and now it's at plus 122, is over 2.5 rounds. I honestly think this fight's going to go to decision, even though Vegas thinks it's going to end inside the distance at minus 170. I just think Yakovlev's going to do well enough to defend any submissions, and Yakovlev is not that great of a finisher, even though he does finish at 72%. I just don't see him finishing Alvarez either. Or if you want to get a little more juice, go to decision for plus 140. But that's how I kind of see this fight playing out. But either way, I think for the most part, this is not a primary option for either cash or GPP. These would be secondary options for GPP and, more of if you're building a certain cash lineup, if you're trying to force in 2 or 3 of those high price guys, you could put in a guy like Yakovlev, but I wouldn't force it.
Yeah, I mean, I like Alvarez this fight. Like I said, I showed you my percentages. I have him in 7 out of 20 lineups that I made. So, yeah. I mean, I like him honestly. But
and then this fight we got next fight we got Nathaniel Wood at 7,500 and Casey Kenny at 8,700. This is probably on this card, besides the main event, is one of the main fights I'm really looking forward to watching. This one's going to be very, very entertaining. Both guys strike at a high clip. You got Wood, who throws 5.5 significant strikes a minute. We got Kenny, who throws at 4.25, and I think that's honestly kind of low because a lot of his fights when he was fighting early on, he was defending takedowns or getting taken down. So to still throw 4.25 and being taken down a ton, facing guys like Ray Borg, Dvalishvili, and all them, and still have your average be that's pretty ridiculous. I know last fight he threw 109 in 3 rounds.
Oh yeah, he beat the heck out of that guy. But this fight won't be like that.
So I thought last fight Kenny would actually implement his takedowns, but he just showed how well he was on the feet. He didn't need to really implement that takedown game, and I think this is going to be a very, very close fight. I think, if it starts becoming too close on the feet between the two, because they're both going to be throwing, I think that's when you're going to see probably Kenny go for those takedowns. I wouldn't be surprised if Wood shoots for the takedown, but Kenny's scrambling ability is ridiculous. I mean, he's fought, obviously, like I said, guys like Zavalishvili, Ray Borg. I'm trying to think of who else he fought that was a great wrestler. And he was able to get up, reverse positions, move around. So I think, it's going to be one of those things where even if Wood gets him down, it's not going to be down for very long. I don't think he's going to do much if he tries. I just think Kenny's going to be just slightly better. But I think ultimately this fight goes to decision. Um, I don't. What's the current line on this fight goes to decision? It is minus 180. It's a little bit higher than I would like, but even still, I mean, I think you could definitely play that. It's not a bad play at all because I don't see either of these two getting a finish. These guys aren't. I mean, Wood's more of a finisher, but Kenny's never been finished, and I just think whoever wins is going to decision. So either if you have a stronger lean for one of these two, bet it by decision, or just go take the fight by decision and put a couple units on it. As far as DraftKings is concerned, I would say Kenny is more of a cash play. I mean, if you look at some of his wins when he hasn't gotten a finish, he's only scoring in the 80s and he's 8.7. So he'll be probably 10x, 9x, maybe gets to 11x if he gets a bunch of takedowns. But I think he's more of a cash play. Where I think Wood, you can definitely use him as a cash play, but I feel like he has a bit higher ceiling, and I think he's a better GPP play than a cash play. But you can definitely use him in both formats. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, actually, I mean, Wood. I'm on the other side here. I think Wood is maybe my favorite cash game, or my favorite cash, game fighter of this slate. Um, I mean, like you pointed out, he lands 5.52 strikes per minute. Both fighters absorb around 3.3 strikes per minute, so he's going to get those strikes. And then on top of that, I mean, you mentioned Kenny landing the takedown, but if you look at their takedown defense, Kenny only has a 53% takedown defense. Now, granted, like you said, he's been against some great takedown artists in Borg and
Zavalishvili.
Davishvili. So
Zavalishvili just screwed. I mean, that just skews it. He got taken down 12 times.
So I mean, maybe that line gets screwed a little bit there, but still, Wood has an 83% takedown defense. So he has a pretty good takedown defense when it comes to that. So I think if anyone's going to land the takedown, honestly, it's going to be Wood. So I like Wood a lot in cash. Kenny, I don't mind in GPP. And I don't necessarily mind him in cash either. I just think Wood's still a little bit better of the play personally. Betting wise, I probably wouldn't bet it just because I think it's going to be such a close fight. I think that it has potential fight of the night, potential written all over it. So, I probably wouldn't bet this fight either way. But yeah, I like Wood a lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say, Nathaniel Wood's takedown defense is a little inflated. If you look at the guys he's fought, Johnny Aguardo, Andre Ewell, Jose Quinones, John Dodson, and John Castellanda. None of those guys are big time wrestlers, so it's easier to defend against those type of fighters. Where when you look at Kenny, he's faced the best of wrestlers in the division. So that's why I think it's both. I think both their defensive stats are skewed by who they have fought.
Yeah,
I'm not saying Nathaniel Wood's bad takedown defense because he's defended at 80% when he needs to, but I think his are a little overinflated, where I think Kenny's are underinflated, or whatever which way you want to go. It should he really defends at a better clip.
I mean, we even saw that last fight though, that I think Kenny got taken down once or twice, didn't he? And I mean, that was against a guy that was getting the shit kicked out of him.
Who, Haile Alatang?
Yeah, I thought he took him down like once or twice.
Not according to the fight metrics.
No,
he's got no takedowns. Let me see if there's any takedown attempts. KC went 0 for 1.
okay.
So that's
yeah, maybe I was thinking of something different, but yeah, I thought he took him down once or twice, maybe not.
Oh yeah, I forgot he fought Manny Bermudez too, who's another high level wrestler. So that's
Yeah,
what I'm saying.
I mean, I'm not saying that he's fought the best in the best of the competition, but still 83%. That's nothing to necessarily sneeze at.
No.
Even if that's inflated a little bit, we're talking probably at least 70, 75% if he's facing some better competition. So I personally like Wood a little bit more, especially for the salary 7,500. I think he easily should get you 70 to 80 points, and 7,500 you can't beat that, especially for cash.
Yeah, I think if Wood wins, he's probably going to score very well. That's why I think he's fine for a cash play, but I think ultimately he's got the high upside because if you look at all his wins, I think he averages over 100 points in his wins.
Yeah.
So he has definitely the high upside. But all right, next fight we got Miranda Maverick 9,300 and Liana Jojua at 6,900. I'm going to throw this one to you, Ryan. What do you think?
Uh, I mean, I know that you know if Maverick wins and scores good, it has to be that she wins via finish, which she does have submission skills. But in the tape that I watched, I just honestly I wasn't very impressed in her. Her striking skills were very very lacking. And I mean, yeah, she had good takedown from what I saw for the most part. I watched a couple fights of hers, but just she didn't do much for me at all. And for someone at 9,300 having her UFC debut, I mean, granted, she's fighting Joe Jawa, who doesn't really do anything for me either. But I personally I don't think that Maverick is going to hit value. Um, Maybe if you're making multiple lineups like I did, um, throw her in a couple GPP lineups. I think I threw her in. Let's see, Maverick. I put her in 3 out of 20. So I mean, yeah, I like her as a dart in case she gets that submission, but I really don't like either of these fighters that much at all.
I have I don't know. I just have that gut feeling that this fight, whoever wins, is going to be on the optimal. I mean, obviously, Jojo, if she wins, it's going to be by an armbar because that's how she gets all of her wins, is via armbar. So if she gets it at 6,900 an armbar, whether it's in the first or the third round, she's paying it off and is on optimal almost more than likely. But I honestly think Miranda Maverick, for the most part, if she wins, like you said, is going to be by a submission. Both of these girls on the feet are terrible strikers. I mean, it is ugly. I mean, I would say Maverick is probably better, but I wouldn't say leaps and
That's
bounds.
not saying much.
Yeah, it's definitely not very much at all. And I think I'm not going to spend too much time trying to break it down. I just think Maverick will be able to get the takedowns. Jojo is not like a great wrestler, and I think Maverick and Jojo is more willing to be on her back to try to get those arm bars and other sweep to get those positions. Where I think Maverick will will get her down and eventually work to get that submission. I think Maverick's smart enough to avoid the arm bars, and I think it could be the first or second round, but she gets a submission. I think at 9,300, she's probably going to be the second lowest owned in that 9K range. I think Alvarez will probably be the lowest, but maybe not because he's $300 less. But
Right.
I think those two will be the lowest two. Alvarez and Maverick will be the lowest two owned in the 9K range. And I think if you want to pivot to one of those guys to get away for ownership purposes for GPPs, I would still prefer Maverick over Alvarez. I think there's a higher probability that Maverick gets an earlier finish or in general than Alvarez. But it's not a fight I'm putting in my single entry GPP. We'll put it that way.
Absolutely not.
But I mean, the only upside I see with Jojua is she normally fights at 135 pounds, so she's coming down to 125 for this fight. So she'll have a big size advantage. So maybe it'll be tougher for Maverick to get her down, and maybe it'll be better for her in the scheme of things with the fight. But you never know. She just doesn't look good at all. So, but that's just kind of something I'll just throw out there that she will be the bigger fighter. She's moving down, but we'll move on to the next fight. We got Sam Alvey at 6,800 and Dong Un Jung at 9,400. I would say Dan Un Jung is the perfect cash play and probably one of the safest plays on this entire card. Sam Alvey throws no volume. I think that 3.11 is significant strikes that he throws is misleading. I think it's more like 1.5. I don't know how it got as high as it is because he throws nothing. I mean, he eats more strikes than he throws. He's just looking to land that one big counter shot, and he just looks. He's old. He's shop worn. I just don't like anything from him. I mean, he's moved up to 205, and since he's done that, he hasn't really done much. He hasn't looked great at 205. He doesn't have that same power to knock people out. I mean, I just don't see it. I mean, Dong Un Jung is a high volume striker. He's smart. He's can eat a punch. If you looked at weigh-ins, he was absolutely massive. He looked a lot way bigger than Alvey. And at 9,400, I mean, it's a tough price to pay, but I think, if you're building a cash lineup, you probably want to throw him in there if you can fit him. Wouldn't say force it, but if you can, put him in there. But I think he's probably one of the safest plays. I just don't see Alvey landing that one blow to get the knockout win, and I think Alvey's honestly fadeable because even if he gets a knockout, with his volume, if he gets it, maybe it's late, but it won't score well unless he gets it in the first round. I think Sam Alvey's a complete fade overall. I know I've seen a lot of people on Twitter on Alvey, but I just don't get it. But I'm going to throw this one to you, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do favor Jung. He is one of my favorite plays of this slate, but I do have a little bit of LV sprinkled in as well, just because of that knockout potential. Well, he hasn't shown it much recently. In the past, he has shown that knockout potential to finish the fight with one punch, and Jung does. Yeah, he lands 6.59 strikes per minute, but at the same time, he absorbs 7.5 strikes per minute. So he absorbs a lot of strikes. I know LV doesn't throw, as many as like you said, but even if he is in that 2.5 to 3 range, that still leaves Jung open to the potential for the finish. So I mean, I definitely do like Jung a lot more, both in both forms, GPP as well as cash. He's one of my more high-owned fighters this slate, but I think if you're making multiple lineups, it's not a bad play to sprinkle LV in a couple, especially because it allows you to get multiple of those higher fighters like Khabib, Maverick, just a bunch of them basically. So I don't hate it.
Just one note I forgot to mention earlier when we were talking about Yoel Alvarez. He did miss weight today. He missed by almost 4 pounds. And by all means, it looked like he didn't even try to cut weight. He came in, he didn't ask for the towel. He looked completely hydrated and he just stepped on the scale. So there might be some reasoning behind that, hoping to avoid the takedowns, being the bigger guy. He's going to be the bigger guy anyways, but just wanted to throw that out there before I forget that. And then as far as the last fight, Miranda Maverick versus Joe Jua, as far as betting perspective, the only line that I see that I like on that line was Miranda Maverick by submission at plus 140. But besides
that's not a bad bet. I mean, I personally wouldn't bet that fight, just like I wouldn't bet this fight either. But
I know. Well, the one thing I would say on this fight, I would probably, if anything, maybe do. I mean, right now this fight is projected to the line's at over under 1.5, which most fights are normally 2.5. So they're expecting it to finish early, but at over, or what was it? No, it's not the over. Never mind, I missed it. I thought look at the wrong fight. I thought the over was plus money. I was gonna say you probably want to hit the over 1.5 if it was plus money, but I would still say probably where is it? I'm looking for it. Jung by decision plus 250. I like that bet a lot because Alvy's tough and I know he's been knocked out a couple times as he's gotten older, but I still think that Alvy's still a tough dude. And I think that, at plus 250, I would take a stab at that.
Yeah.
All right. We got next fight. I'm going to butcher this one. Shavkat Rachmanov at 7,700. And we got Alex Cowboy Oliveira at 8,500. Ryan, what are your thoughts on this fight?
I mean, Oliveira has looked a lot better recently in his last couple fights, but at the end of the day, he just doesn't score well enough for DraftKings perspectives. I mean, even in his last fight, which he looked pretty good, he didn't really score that well. I think Rachmanov has a very good chance to pull the upset here. He's one of my my more favorite dog plays on this slate when it comes to GPP. He has pretty good takedown defense, has shown pretty good power as well in the tape that I watched of him. So I definitely think that he has the ability to potentially finish the fight. Even if he doesn't at 7,700, I think that he'll score enough with strikes and stuff like that to potentially win in a decision victory. I would just put him more than likely in GPP lineups. I wouldn't put him in cash, but Oliveira, honestly, I'm completely fading. He doesn't score well enough at all for me to pay 8,500 for him when you have Volkov, you have Struve, you have Whitaker, Kamaria, all in that same kind of price point area. So yeah, I'm not touching Oliveira at all.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Oliveira when he scored on DraftKings and wins recently, he's been scoring I want to say like 70 points, 80 points. That's even might be on the high end. Like he unless he gets that first round knockout, he doesn't score very well. And like I'm kind of in the same boat as you, that I think I don't think I'll have much exposure to Alex Oliveira. I mean, he does have the potential to knock anybody out. He's a very talented fighter. He can, on the feet, he has super power. He's got a good BJJ game, but I just don't trust him. You never know what kind of cowboy he's going to come out. Like last Cowboy when he fought Sabata, that was probably one of the better Cowboy performances I've ever seen out of him. He was able to keep Sabata at range, stop him from the takedowns, and he looked great. And he lasted all 3 rounds. He did slow down a little bit in the second and third, but
he still only scored 62.5 points.
Yeah. He doesn't throw very high. He's literally he's just looking for that big shot. It's almost like a Sam Alvey in a sense, but this Cowboy's got way more skills than Alvey does. Where Rachmanov, or I don't even know what's gonna call him, Shamkat.
I think Rachmanov is probably right.
I think he's got 100% finish rate. He's a he's a good wrestler, and if it gets out of the first round, it's going to become dicey. If it's the Cowboy from last fight, I think Cowboy could use those light kicks and teep kicks to keep Romanov away from getting taken down. But it's a very, very close fight. I don't think either are going to get the finish. And if anything, I would say more Romanov will probably get a finish in this fight, just because Cowboy will gas, and I think Romanov will be able to work some ground and pound, and try to some submissions on the ground. But either way, I would prefer. I mean, for DraftKings, I prefer Romanov. I think there's more upside in everything, but I slightly think Oliveira's. I think because he's trying to feed his 10 kids, that he's coming out motivated.
He's got kids, man.
I mean, I forget where I heard it, but I believe he has like 7 kids from like 4 different wives, and they all live on the same street. And that's not like it's a made up story. It's like 100% true or something. I'm not sure.
Shit out of like Utah or something like that, where they're all living in a mansion together.
Yeah, they I guess all these women live on the same street, and he has multiple children with a lot of them. But I've heard it from multiple sources that it's like true. It's not just some fable story that they all live on like the same street. But again, I slightly prefer Oliveira. I think the experience is going to be enough for him to get this fight. But it's hard to trust Oliveira. If it is the good Oliveira, I think he dominates this fight, and it's not close. But you never know what you're getting with him. But as far as DraftKings, I think Romanov is my preferred play for that. I think you can use him for cash because I don't see Oliveira getting the finish, and I think with the wrestling and the takedowns and at 7,700, I think there's enough where he can pay off value even if he loses. But he definitely has upside with wrestling and everything else to do well in this fight for GPP. So I think you can kind of use him in both formats for the most part, but I still think Cowboy squeaks out some crazy decision. I don't know. He'll be close. All right. Next is one of the ugly lower level heavyweight fights. We got Tai Tuivasa at 7,900, and we got the skyscraper Stefan Struve at 8,300. Stefan Struve is 7 feet tall, or according to UFC, it's 6'11", but everybody says he's 7 feet tall and plus. And Tai Tuivasa is a former Aussie rules football or rugby player, and he's just looking to wing bombs. He's like a mini, or I don't want to call him a mini, but he's like a Mark Hunt to a degree. That's how he fights. He's just looking to throw haymakers. He does press forward. He throws at a little over 4 significant strikes a minute. And this fight is going to come down to two things: is Stefan Struve going to get takedowns? Because if he does, he's likely going to submit Tai Tuivasa's got no ground game at all. Or is Tai Tuivasa going to hit the skyscraper when he's doing his tall man defense, leaning back and catch him in the chin and knock him out? I think Tai Tuivasa is going to get the knockout. He's training now, I believe, at AKA down, I think with like Khabib and all them. I believe that's where he's at now, and I think that's going to help him, to improve his takedown defense. Hopefully, I've heard rumors that he hasn't had anything to drink in 2 months. So if that's true, that's only going to help him, with this fight, with his cardio, with everything else. And I kind of like Tai Tuivasa. I'll probably be overweight on him because you're getting him at 7,900. He's, I think, what is he at? He's like at he's at 145 to finish inside the distance, and his fight overall is minus 250. I think overall this is fight you are going to want to target for GPP because I think it's going to end in, let's call the finish one way or another, whether it's tie by knockout or Struve by submission. But it's not a fight I can trust either fighter. So I am not, saying I'm going to go 100% on Tai Tuivasa or I'm over, I just don't feel comfortable. But I think I would be more overweight with Tuivasa than Struve, but I'm going to have him in most of my lineups. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm the same way, and it concerns the ever living hell out of me because I think I have Tuivasa in like 8 or 9 out of my 20 lineups, so almost at 40-45%.
It's hard not to. He's 7,900, and with his odds and everything, and I honestly think he will be one of the, for GPPs, will be one of the highest owned guys and chalkiest plays.
Yeah, neither of them really am I very interested in. Struve definitely has his chin has looked very questionable as of late. Tuivasa, he's lost his last, I think, like 3 fights. But granted, they have been against pretty well-known fighters. Before that kind of 3-fight losing streak, he was knocking people out left and right. Granted, against lesser competition, but that's kind of what makes me like him in this fight. Is Struve, well, everyone knows his name. He just is not at the level of competition that Tuivasa has been facing recently. I do have a little bit of Struve as well, but I definitely do lean Tuivasa. I think either of them are very safe for GPP. Well, not necessarily safe, but you want one of them in your lineup for GPP. I think this fight is getting finished one way or the other. Either Struve will finish Tuivasa or Tuivasa will finish Struve. So I think you want this fight one way or the other in your lineup, and it's a very reasonable fight too for the pretty strong likelihood that you probably get at least 85 to 90 points. So I like Tuivasa though.
I mean, our man Kevin, who who's a soccer guy of at DFI, he made one funny comment. He says he wants to see Tai Tuivasa win so he can watch Stefan Struve fold like a giraffe. And that's one of the funniest things is every time Struve has been knocked out, he's been knocked out 8 times. It literally looks like a giraffe falling. I thought that was a funny comment when we were talking fights earlier. But yeah, I mean, as far as bets, I don't know. I don't get why Tuivasa by KO is plus 145. I honestly thought it would be like minus money. So to get plus 145 on that, I like that bet a lot.
Yeah, I think, people are probably concerned that maybe he gets finished or something like that. I mean, he has lost his last 3 fights.
But
But if
I,
he's
I,
going to win, it's more than likely going to be by knockout. So,
I honestly think for this fight, you bet some money on 145 by Tuivasa by KO, and then you bet some by Struve by submission at plus 300, and it's almost guaranteed money. It's up being at plus money. If you bet the same amount, you're going to win money one way or another. So if you bet $100, you bet $100 on each, you're going to win either 45 or you're going to win 200. So I think,
until the fight is a boring heavyweight fight and goes to decision and
yeah,
really.
that's what ruined. But if I would say that's the most likely scenario in this fight. And I think that would be a way I would, probably bet this fight to a degree, but I haven't, I mean, right as of right now, I have not placed any bets. I am more than likely going to wait till the morning. So it seems like half the time I make bets, they end up those fights get canceled. So I end up just waiting until the morning. So I'm not having my money pended up somewhere on some book.
Yeah.
But all right, next fight we have. This is what the fifth time this tribe's scheduling this fight. We got Ion Kutalaba at 7,300 and Magomed Ankalaev at 8,900. Ryan, what do you think of this fight?
I mean, it's a rematch of their last fight, and we've seen this time and time again, this story time and time again, that when you rematch fights, generally they go pretty close to the same way, especially when you rematch them this closely to one another. It's not like they really had much time to learn from other fights or progress as fighters or anything like that. So I mean, I definitely do like Ankalaev more in this fight. I do think Kutabella. I know you and me differ on this, but I don't think he's that bad of a cash play. Honestly, I mean, if he doesn't get finished, which is questionable, but if he doesn't get finished, I think he scores at minimum 60. Maybe in that 70 range. And so if you're looking at, 9, 10x for a cash play at 7,300, that allows you to get in some of those other guys. I don't necessarily hate it. You don't have to force them in there if you like some of the other cheaper options, which I can definitely understand. But Ankalaev, I more so like him GPP than I do cash. Just because if he doesn't get that finish, he only lands 3.46 strikes per minute. Both fighters have pretty good takedown defense. So unless he gets that finish, I don't know if he scores well enough to be worth 8,900 or Billy makes value. So I like him more for GPP though. And I like Kulabella more so cash, but you can sprinkle them in a little bit in GPP as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is what their fourth or fifth attempt at this fight, and the first one only lasted a few minutes, where Ion Kutalaba supposedly was not knocked out and he wasn't rocked. He was okie dokie, and the ref called it a little earlier. I mean, questionable, but why would you go that route? And you were obviously wobbled enough where you could fool a ref. So obviously
Yeah.
that. So I don't know if Ankalaev's not a huge finisher. He only finishes at a 61%, which is not very high. But on the feet, he's the way better striker. He's way more patient. He's very calculated. Where Cutelaba comes out guns blazing first round, he's looking to rip your head off. And if he doesn't get it, it's not that he does gas to a degree, but he's not like completely shot worn. And I just think Ankalaev at the minimum will just pick him apart all 3 rounds. He could get the knockout, with the high kick again, but I honestly think he probably goes to decision. I would, I know he's got one of the best inside of distance, lines at -110. I honestly think that's a little high. I think it should be, I don't know why he's -110, but then Tuivasa's +140. I honestly think it should be flipped.
Yeah.
And the same thing, the -270, which is the biggest, this is the highest inside the distance line out of all fights. So obviously, if Vegas thinks so, you need to have shares of this lineups in GPP. Whether you think Cutelaba is going to land that one big blow or Ankalaev is just going to piece him apart and eventually get one on Cutelaba. But like Ankalaev doesn't throw at a high volume. He throws at 3.5, significant strikes. He's very accurate when he does throw it. He throws at 51%, but he's not a takedown artist. He averages a little over half a takedown per 15 minutes. I don't know. I'm very confident that he wins. I think he wins pretty easily. I just don't know if he's, like you said, if he's going to pay off that value or not. I've seen other, touts very, very high on him, thinking he's going to be, one of the top plays, and I just don't see that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's harder to see it.
3,900, I don't hate him.
But I think I would rather go other directions at that point. I'd rather go up a couple $100 to some other fighters, or I'd rather just go down.
Yeah.
He's gonna be very highly owned, especially because everybody saw what he did in the last fight, and plus he has good inside the distance odds. I just think personally I'm gonna probably be underweight to the field on him. But I do think he's a safer play. I think you can play him in both cash and GPP, but I just don't. I'm just not confident that he's going to get that finish. And I just like you, what you said, you're not confident in either. So
Yeah, I think I'll probably be about average with the field. Right now, I have him in 40% of my lineups. So if I had to guess, he'd probably be roughly around 35 to 45% range. So I think I'll be around the weight of everyone else there.
But as far as bets concerned, honestly, most of the lines I'm looking at for this fight, I don't think I'm going to touch this fight as a betting. I think the -300 on Ankalaev's too much. +275, I wouldn't do +275 on Ankalaev or on Cutelaba. I think I would rather just take Cutelaba by KO and get better odds, because that's how he's going to win. He's not going to win a decision. And he is +390. I'd rather just do that at that point if you think Cutelaba is going to get the win. But I don't see it. He's just a brawler, where Ankalaev is a technical striker. But do you have any bets on this fight, or are you just completely passing?
I didn't bet on this one at all.
But all right, we got next fight up. It was a late add to the card. You got Lauren Murphy versus Lilia Shakarova. Murphy's kind of like that old veteran. She's got some pretty decent striking, got some power in her hands, but she's just not very good anywhere. She's okay, not great. I mean, she can get some takedowns. Her striking's okay, but she's just one of those fighters where I just don't like her. I'm not going to attack her, for the most part in GPPs or cash. I think she's going to win the fight. I think because of her experience and her, the veteran and being the better striker. I think eventually she's going to win this fight. But at 8,800 for DraftKings, it's just too high. I think she's a fine cash play, but for the most part, I'd rather play Shakarova. She's a former college wrestler. I believe she might have even been an All-American. And I think if she wins, it's probably going to be, she's going to score very highly. I think she'll get a lot of takedowns, probably some rinse and repeat. And I think it will be, at 7,400, and it's not a bad play at all to play her for cash either. but I think her upside is great for GPP to potentially as well. But as a whole, I'm not in love with this fight for GPP. I think I'd rather go other ways because I don't see either of them finishing. But I think Shakarova has the higher upside because of the wrestling. But I still think Murphy wins the fight. What do you think?
Yeah, I like Shakarova. I actually almost picked her for the upset in
You
this fight. Uh, did I?
you did.
Did I? Oh, okay. I didn't end up betting on it, but um, yeah, I mean, I think that it'll be a toss-up fight. Um, Shakarova definitely does have, in my opinion, sneaky power. When I was looking at her tapes and stuff like that, she has pretty sneaky power, pretty good striking skills. Very flashy when it comes to the striking skills. It seemed like she likes to do the spinning kicks and stuff like that. So Murphy, she likes to brawl. Honestly, I mean, she lands almost 4 strikes per minute. She absorbs almost 4 strikes per minute. So I think that this could be a sneaky, high-scoring fight. Honestly, I like Shakarova more, just mainly due to her price point of 7,400. Um, Murphy, I didn't find myself landing on too much. I just, around her price point, there was other people that I liked, but I wouldn't be surprised if she hits 80, 90 points and gets that 10x, just because she does strike a pretty good amount, and her takedown defense isn't the worst. It's 67%. Um, but she has the ability to get taken down. Though honestly, I didn't see Shakarova go for takedowns very often, at least in the fights that I watched. I only watched, like I said, probably about 2 or 3 of her fights, but I didn't see her going for the takedown very often. Honestly, it was more so striking. But
Yeah. All right. Next fight up, we got Philip Haas 9,100 and Jacob Malkoun at 7,100. What do you think, Ryan?
honestly, I'm not sure because I don't know about you, but I could barely find any tape on McCoon at all. There was like 2 fights on that I could find tape on Play 365, but outside of that, there really was not much. And even one of those was like a 15-second clip of him finishing someone. So there really was not much tape on him at all that I could find. Both fighters are making their UFC debuts. From what I saw, I mean, I honestly think that it's a little it's a little bit closer of a fight than what the lines say. But like I said, it's hard to read just because there really was not much tape on him. Hawes lands 3.47 strikes per minute, but he does absorb 5 strikes per minute, lands 1.74 takedowns per fight. But I mean, Malkoun, from what I saw, had pretty good power. You know, he didn't really get attempted to be taken down on, so I can't really say if he has good takedown defense or not. But I mean, for someone that had the power that I saw, it seemed like he was rocking his opponents in the fights that I saw. It could be a close fight. I'd lean Hawes, just because we've seen him do it more and more over the course of time. But Malkoun could be one of those fighters that surprises us and comes out of nowhere and breaks the slate. So
Yeah, it's an interesting fight because I mean, Haas is John Jones's training partner, and that they've been touting him forever that he's the next up and coming prospect. He's been a good he's a great fighter, but he's 31 now. They kind of I mean, from what I've seen and heard, he's he had bad management who put him in certain fights too early on when he wasn't ready, and it kind of ruined his career and just didn't get him where he needed to be right away, where he had the talent to do it. and I think now it's finally come into place. But obviously, then you have Jacob Malkoun, who's Robert Whittaker's sparring partner. So it's kind of interesting to have, you know, two guys that are coming up, you know, who are highly touted training partners. Um, as you said, there was not much footage on Malkoun at all, and from everything I could find, read, you know, watch, you know, Malkoun just, you know, has a lot of power, but Paz has, you know, the wrestling ability. He's got power in his hands, but the biggest problem with Paz is he has poor cardio. So when it gets out of the first round, he often struggles. And I think that's where Malkoun is probably going to capitalize. I think if Paz gets, you know, wins, it's probably going to be in the first round, and I think he'll put up a ton of points. But I think if he gets out of the first, it's going to become dicey. And I think that's where Malkoun has a very good chance to land something. I think this is a fight for in GPP. You're definitely going to want to target. I think it's going to end in a finish. It's minus 225 to finish inside the distance. I honestly think this fight's going to be more inside the distance than Ankalaev Kutalaba. And I'm probably going to be overweight on Haas. I haven't finalized any of my lineups yet. I don't like doing it until, you know, in the morning before the fight because there's just so many cancellations and I just don't want to deal with changing millions of lineups.
Yeah, normally I
So,
don't either, but I didn't feel like waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning to make lineups.
I'll be up early, so I just don't. I usually wait until, you know, I start to see when the GPP is getting filled, then I'll just throw them all in. So at least I know I'm entered in the fields. But I prefer Philip Haas in this fight. I'll probably be slightly overweight at 9,100. I think after I think he'll potentially be after Khabib will probably be the number 2 guy in the 9K range owned. I think it's going to be him or Jung. I don't think
I personally think Jung will be more owned.
I don't. The only thing that reason why I don't is because 9,400 hurts lineup in building,
And not
especially if you're going to be throwing.
not this much though. If you're going Jung, more than likely you're probably going Gaethje. So
I don't. I have a feeling. You know, I think Gaethje's going to be by far the highest owned, but I don't want to talk too much about that now. But he'll be the highest owned fighter. He'll probably be upwards north of 60% owned in GPPs, and obviously probably almost 100% in cash. But I just think I think a lot of people will not want to. They want to get two fighters in that upper tier from like the 8.9 to 9,400, and he, I think because of Jung being 94, he won't be as popular. Everybody knows he's got great odds and everything, but I think it's tough to build with him. That's why I think Haas has great inside additions. I think he's technically got the best inside of distance line at minus 120. So I think he's going to draw a lot of ownership just because you're saving $300 where you can spend that elsewhere.
yeah, I mean, I do have Haas right now in 7 out of 20 lineups, so it's not that I don't like him.
Yeah.
I have him in 7 out of 20, and I have Jung in 8 out of 20. So I have them, pretty close to even, honestly. But I personally think that Jung will be a tiny bit more owned than Haas.
But all right, next fight we have Walt Harris at 7,600 and Alexander Volkov at 8,600. If you haven't seen, it was posted already today. Alexander Volkov was the DFI must-have for this week. 8,600, I think, is a great price for him in just in general because in this fight he's the way better technical striker. He throws at high volume, especially for heavyweight. To throw in over 4.5 significant strikes is very high. Most heavyweights are, around 3, if not lower than 3, because they just can't sustain that pace. He's going to have a big height and reach advantage. He's going to be about 2 inches, maybe even 3 inches taller than Harris. He's going to be another 2 or 3 inches in reach, and which is going to make it tough for Harris to, hit Volkov. Volkov has got good striking defense. He only absorbs a little over 2 strikes a minute, so a little over 2.5 a minute. So he's basically got almost a 2-for-1 strike to absorb ratio, which is pretty ridiculous. If you're at 1, that's pretty decent, but to be at 2 or anything more than 2 is very good. And I just think the main thing I think I talked with Ryan early this morning when I saw it was the only thing that concerns me a little bit with Volkov is that he came in a little bit heavier than normal for this fight. Normally he comes in around high 240s, low 250s, and he came in at 265. But maybe that was strategic. Maybe that was, so that way if Walt did try taking him down, he could defend it easier with more weight. But Walt Harris also came in the lightest he's almost come in his UFC career. I believe he was down in like the 240s, I think, low 240s. But for Walt Harris to win this fight, he's got to land that one punch knockout. If Harris doesn't land that one punch knockout in the first, he's going to be gassed. He's gassed in every fight. I mean, if you saw him in the Overeem fight, he knocked Overeem, but Overeem's got a glass chin. And surprisingly, Overeem survived the round and then knocked him out the next round. Volkov has got cardio to go. He's been in 5-round fights. I believe he beat Verdum in the 4th round. He knocked him out. So he definitely has cardio to go the distance, and especially in a 3-round fight. And with his volume, and I honestly think if you watched when he fought Curtis Blades last fight, he was able to take Curtis Blades down.
He won those last 2 rounds easy, in my opinion.
So Curtis Blades took him down a bunch, but he got right back up every time. Honestly, it shocked me how well Volkov did in that Curtis Blades fight. If you watch at the end of the fight, that's the first time you ever seen Curtis Blades breathing heavy. And Volkov, surprisingly, he was breathing heavy, but not as bad as you would think for a guy getting taken down. I think he got taken down like 12 times in that fight.
More than that, honestly. I think it was like 13 or 14.
Yeah. But for a guy getting taken down that many times and getting punched in the head and everything else, usually you're kind of winded, and he was still getting up every single time. I like Volkov a lot in this fight. I think he is a great play for GPP. He's a great play for cash. At 8,600, you have so much flexibility at that point. So you can play Khabib and could probably play another 9K guy and then build around. Normally, it's just the way pricing has been recently and the way we've happened to be more in the 9K range almost when we pick our must-haves. But I feel very confident in Volkov. I know, Ryan, that when we talked early on in the week, we asked each other, I think it was Monday, who we felt, and we both asked each other who we liked, and that was the first person we both said. So obviously we knew early on Volkov was going to be the must-have, and I like him a lot in this spot. I think it's a great, I think he'll easily pay off $8,600, and I think he has the potential to get the finish for Walt Harris, maybe land some takedowns and score well. So, and I don't think he's going to be I don't think he'll be as owned as many of the other fighters. I think he will be probably in the mid 20% own range. And I think that's going to be awesome for us, especially, all you subscribers at DFI, to get a lower ownership on him and, get big payoff. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I like him a good amount. You mentioned that Overeem fight. That one still haunts me. Had the ref just finished, called the fight in the first round when Harris had rocked Overeem and pretty much had him out, would have won $8,000 in GPP.
That was like I think the same thing when Volkov faced Derek Lewis. I think I had what's called Volkov, and he was winning up until 10 seconds left, and he got knocked out.
Yeah.
I was like the reverse. I think I would have won a bunch of cash that night too because of that. But yeah.
But yeah, I just think Harris, he just gasses way too much, and maybe that is why he tried to shed a little bit of weight to, hopefully not gas as much. But he's shown that every single fight he is gassed in. Harris can take you down from time to time, so I'm hoping that's why Volkov put on the extra weight to, hopefully not have a Blades scenario again. Not that he, didn't do well against Blades in those last 2 rounds, but this only being a 3-round fight, he can't cruise for 3 rounds to jump in the last 2 rounds like he did the Blaze fight. He needs to be stopping those takedowns from round 1. Volkov, like you said, lands 4.65 strikes per minute. Harris actually absorbs more strikes than he throws, not by much, but anytime that you're absorbing more strikes than you're landing, that is not a good recipe for success. Volkov's power has kind of slowed down a little bit recently, it seems. But I think that Harris's chin is weak enough that Volkov should be able to get the finish in this fight, probably early to mid second, and score pretty good, get in about the 90 to 100 point range, and at 8,600, that's huge value. I think you can put Volkov in cash or GPP, either or. Obviously being the must-have of the week. Harris, maybe if you want to sprinkle him a little bit if you're doing multi-lineups. Anytime we say a must-have, that doesn't mean that if you're making 20, 30 lineups that you have to have this guy in every single lineup. Still be smart about it. Don't go crazy. So, I mean, if you want to sprinkle Harris in a couple, if you're making 20-plus lineups, I'm not necessarily against it just because he does have that knockout power. But I wouldn't go too crazy on him.
It's just a couple other notes on Walt Harris. He's fought in the UFC 14 times. His record is 6-7-1. I mean, if you want to look at the guys he's won against, they're towards the bottom of the barrel. You have Cody East, Chase Sherman, Cyril Asker, Daniel Spitz, Sergey Spivak, and probably his best win might be Alexei Olenek. And that was because he caught him with a flying knee. So it's not like he knocked him out with his normal punches. He's only beaten very low level heavyweights. And every time he's had to step up in competition, he's lost. He lost over him. He's lost to Mark Godbeard, who's terrible. Fabricio Verdum, Shamil Akadumov, Salio Palomali, like all these guys are, Nikita Krylov, Jared Rochold. There's some of them are good, but some of them aren't very good, and he's lost to them.
So he's basically the Anthony Smith of this division, where he just fights and beats guys that suck now.
Yeah, and everybody thinks that he's still a young prospect, but he's not. He's 37 years old. He's just, he's a former football player, so he's still got athleticism, but it's slowly going on him. He doesn't have the cardio, and it just wanted to throw those little extra tidbits in there just to let you know how bad Walt Harris really is, and that Volkov has fought very good guys. He's beaten Fabricio. He's beaten guys, top level guys in the division. He should have beat Derek Lewis. If he had beat Derek Lewis in that fight, he probably would have fought for the belt, or if not been the next guy in line waiting to fight for the belt when that fight happened, because he was on a couple fight win streak at that point. But he lost, and that just derailed him. And I think he's going to get back on track and probably be another fight or two away from potentially getting that fight for the championship again.
Yeah,
I don't think he's going to win it, but I think he can get his way close to another title shot, or not another, but get a title shot.
I mean, I'm not sure quite what Volkov is now. I know earlier in the week when I bet it, he was negative 180. But I think Volkov is a very strong bet as well. To throw a couple units on it, I think he's a pretty safe bet.
Yeah, right now he's depending upon what side, he's anywhere from minus 170 to minus 180. So
yeah,
I still like that. I still like that bet a lot, and I think throw a couple units on it. I think should be a fairly safe cash bet right there. Next fight, we got the co-main event of the evening. We got Robert Whitaker at 8,000 and at Jared Cannonier at 8,200. Ryan, throwing this one to you. What do you think?
I know we differ. I personally like Whitaker in this fight. I think he's safe for cash or GPP. Cannonier just I mean, yeah, he's had a couple good knockouts, but outside of that, the guy just really has not impressed me that much. He's been very up and down throughout his entire career. Um, I think Whitaker is a good enough fighter that he can make it that way he doesn't get knocked out. I mean, the only guy that he's ever lost against is the champion. Um, I just think he's the better all around fighter. Whitaker lands 4.51 strikes per minute, only absorbs 3.43. Canair lands 3.72. Not that, and I think we talked about this maybe in the Till fight as well. Not that Whitaker goes for takedowns. He only averages about a half a takedown a fight, but Canair only does have a 51% takedown defense. So I'd like to maybe see Whitaker. I highly doubt we see it, but I'd like to see him maybe try to get one takedown. If it is a close fight, if it goes to the decision and he gets that extra takedown, that could be the difference between winning and losing. Either way, I think that I think he wins this fight more than likely via decision. I just think he'll land enough strikes to be able to get a decision victory and make it that way he doesn't get knocked out. And yeah, kind of jump back into that title race. I think he's a very safe bet for betting wise as well. He's it's pretty much a pick 'em fight, but I like him at -110. I think that's a pretty solid bet, honestly. So yeah, I'm kind of on Whitaker, both cash and GPP. Canair, if you want to sprinkle him in a few GPP, I'm not against that though.
Same, yeah. Me and you are complete opposites on this fight. I mean, after Whitaker has gone through Yoel Romero for 10 rounds. That's life changing. He goes out after that fight, fights Adesanya, gets knocked out, goes next fight against Darren Till, gets rocked right in the way, and I believe he got rocked again at another point in that fight. He got hit pretty well.
Still won.
Still won. I completely agree. And there were some other people that were in our MMA chat that completely disagreed, but I just think Whitaker struggles to take hard punches anymore. Like Yoel dropped him multiple times throughout all their fights, and it was even questionable whether he beat Yoel in some of those fights. I mean, Robert Whitaker's chin is my biggest issue. It's not his fighting, because he's probably a better striker than Cannonier. I mean, way Robert Whitaker throws, he throws from weird angles. He doesn't throw it traditionally, traditional hooks. He kind of throws more up and hooks and the other issue I have with Whitaker too is he keeps his hands too low. And that's why I think he gets caught too often. He tries to rely on his speed and athleticism, and I think he often gets caught because he keeps his hands too low. Where you got Whitaker, who's a very patient counter striker with a tremendous power. He used to fight at heavyweight. Then he moved down to 205 and he fought, the current champ, Jan Blachowicz. He fought the guy who took John Jones and probably should have beat John Jones, and Dominic Reyes. He lost to him. And he lost to Glover Teixeira. Like, those are 3 of his losses. Glover's one of the top guys in the division as well. It's like he hasn't really lost a bad fight. I mean, his first fight in the UFC lost to Sean Johnson, who wasn't really a bad fighter, but that's at heavyweight. Cannonier is now at 185. And back then he weighed in, I believe, at like 230 or 240. He weighed in at 235. So that's a big weight cut. And now he's ripped. He's a big dude. And I mean, when he fills out for this fight, he's going to be a lot bigger than Whitaker. And I think that power is going to translate. I think he's going to be able to land that one punch that knocks out Whitaker. I think, honestly, if you watch the Till fight versus Whitaker, it was a very strategic battle. Like, Whitaker didn't go throw a ton of strikes. I think he scored like 80 points in a 5-round win.
Yes.
I think it was
pounds.
it wasn't very high by any means. I have a feeling. I mean, this is only 3 rounds. I mean, I think it could be another chess match potentially because Whitaker knows that his chin's kind of getting broken recently, and it could potentially, if Whitaker just tries to avoid it, doesn't get the wrestling, it could be a slow pace fight. But I think Cannonier is gonna test that chin and eventually knock out Whitaker, and I think he's a great tournament play. Whitaker, I mean,
He scored 87.5. I mean, it's almost 90.
but in a 5 round fight though, I mean, if you're in a 5 round fight, you should be scoring more than that, especially for a guy who throws 4.5 strikes a minute. You know, I think Till actually almost scored just as many points in the loss. I
Yeah,
think.
if I remember, it was pretty close.
Or no, it wasn't. No, maybe it wasn't because he got the knockdowns, but he didn't throw very much. If he threw more volume, he would have won the fight.
Yeah, I think he had like 65 or 70.
But I prefer Cannonier. I just think there's more upside. I don't see Whitaker knocking out Cannonier. I mean, if Whitaker does implement his wrestling game, he could do well. I mean, he tried.
He did get some takedowns against Till. I just looked it up, and I mean, so
he got. I believe he got 2. I thought he should have been credited with 3, but I remember I was mad at Fight Metrics. I thought he got 1 more and he didn't get credit for it. But the problem is Whitaker Till was able to defend him. He didn't stay on the ground for very long, besides the one, and I believe in the second round when he controlled him for the good part of that second. I think it was the second round, second or third round. He controlled Till, but besides that, Till was able to pop up almost every other time he got taken down. I mean, Cannonier is going to be the bigger guy. He's looked pretty impressive, even when Hermanson took him down. He was able to pop back up relatively quickly, and I just think Cannonier is just going to land that one shot. I mean, I'm not super confident in it, but I'm not super confident in Robert Whitaker winning the fight either. And I just think this is a fight that, for GPPs, I would rather have Cannonier than Whitaker. I think there's just more upside. But either way, I don't think this is a primary fight to target for GPP. If you are, I still think it's Cannonier, but I think this is kind of almost a secondary option. But I think I'll probably be a little overweight on Cannonier, being that this is the 82 8,000. It's the right in the smack dab in the middle.
Yeah.
It's kind of surprising. You think Whitaker, being the former champ, would garner a lot of ownership, especially being the underdog in the fight and only being 8,000. But I think he's going to be way lower owned, and I think you have a chance to, if you do like him, I know that you like him, you'll probably be overweight to more than the field, and it could be a huge advantage if he gets to win.
Yeah, I think right now I have him. Let's see, what do I have? I have him at picture. Whitaker. I mean, I only have him at 25%, so it's not like I have him in a crazy amount. I actually have Cannonier at 30%. So I actually have Cannonier a tiny bit more in my lineups. But I mean, I think Whitaker's more so a cash play in my opinion than GPP, but I don't dislike either of them.
But all right, we're finally here. We're at the main event of the evening. We got Khabib the Eagle Nurmagomedov at 9,200 and Justin Gaethje 7,000. I know we differ on this fight. I mean, I agree that Khabib should be the favorite. Don't get me wrong. I think he's one of the GOATs of all time. He's 28-0. He's a great fighter. He's got great wrestling. But I think minus 320 over 300 that he currently is just way too high. He was only minus 220, I think, against Dustin Poirier. And he was only like minus 180 against Conor. And I think Gaethje is better stylistically against Khabib than either of those two. And I just don't get the line. I get why he's the favorite, and he should be. But as far as a betting line, I don't agree with it at all. And I don't agree that inside the distance line for Gaethje either at being at minus 420. I think it should be closer to a minus 280 300, if not minus, but plus 280 to 300, I think would be better. I think plus 420 is just way too high. I think Gaethje's upside, I mean, most of his wins or pretty much all of his wins have come inside the distance. But stylistically, this is a fight that is super, super interesting because Khabib has never fought someone who has a wrestling background like Gaethje has, but Gaethje has never fought anybody who's strictly a wrestler. And I just feel, it's easier to prepare against someone who is just one stylistic matchup than it is to strategize against someone who can do both. Like Dustin Poirier, he can strike, but he also has the ability to take you down, and he has a good submission game. And that's where you're able to get taken down when you normally have a good takedown defense because he has the ability to mix in two. Where with Khabib, he does have decent striking, but I think Gaethje's got good defense and he knows what's coming and he'll be able to defend it. I'm picking Gaethje for the upset. I think we won at $7,000. If he wins, he's automatically on the optimal. There's no ifs, ands, or buts between his volume, between his likelihood that if he wins, it's by finish. He's going to pay off value. He's going to be on the optimal lineups. But with Khabib, if he wins, he's almost guaranteed to be on the optimal. You want one of these two fighters in your lineup. This is the one fight you want probably 100% exposure to, because every time Khabib has won, he has been the highest scoring fighter on that slate. So and it just proves, I believe he averages 111 points on Draftkings in his fights. And that's not just a small sample size, that's through his entire UFC career. I just think this fight's going to come down to, does Justin defend the takedowns and light him up on the feet between leg kicks and, striking him? Or does Khabib implement his takedowns and get takedown, wear out Gaethje, and eventually either finish him or just grind him out for all 5 rounds? I slightly favor Gaethje defending takedowns and lighting him up. I just think he's got the wrestling background. He's a former D1 All-American, 2-time high school state champion. He knows what's going to come, and I think he's just going to chop his legs down, which is going to hinder, Khabib's ability to go for those takedowns, to be explosives and getting them, and then light him up on the feet. If you watch Khabib when he does strike on the feet, he tends to throw a straight jab and he leaves a certain part of him open, and that's the same combination that Gaethje likes to throw, that over the top of that. And I believe Al Iaquinta was able to land that certain combination on him, and I believe Poirier was able to land that a few times as well in that fight. I just think with Gaethje's power, with Gaethje's ability to defend takedowns, everything, I prefer. I think Gaethje wins, and I prefer Gaethje. I know I would say more of the community and most people are probably going to be on Khabib, and rightfully so. But I just have a strong feeling, a strong lean on Justin Gaethje in this fight. But Ryan, I want you to give your part and tell the people why I'm wrong.
Well, first off, I need to ask you if I'm reading this correctly, because I'm looking at Khabib's stat line here, and I'm seeing a fight against a guy named Trujillo.
He got 21 takedowns.
Was one of his earlier fights. 21 takedowns in a 3-round fight. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is accurate. 100%.
That is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most takedowns in any UFC fight, or any, well, probably not, I don't know any MMA fight, but any,
by far, I'd say.
But even in that fight, it's kind of crazy. If you look at if you think if someone got 21 takedowns, you think they would be the highest scoring fighter ever on DraftKings?
155.5.
Which is,
who knows? Was that when takedowns was like worth less points?
No, because all those stats are updated by how it's done now. But you would think it would be a lot higher than that, but he just didn't throw any significant strikes because Trujillo kept getting up
in strikes.
But that's Well, just to give my part on Nurmagomedov, like I think if he wins, he's by far going to break open the slate because Gaethje is probably going to get up a bunch of times because he has that ability, but he's going to be tired, so he'll get up and he's not going to be able to break loose of Khabib, get taken back down again. It potentially could be another one of those fights where he gets 20 takedowns, 21 takedowns, 15 takedowns. It could be like that because has a strong will. He doesn't. It's hard to break him. And same with Khabib. They both have a very hard will, and it just this fight comes down to who can implement their game plan first. If Khabib can get those takedowns early on and wear on Gaethje, and Gaethje's gas tank goes, it's going to be Khabib's fight. But if Gaethje defends those in the first round and second round, and this lights him up, it's going to be tough for Khabib because those leg kicks are going to take a toll. And besides just the normal punches with power that he throws and the volume, it's whoever can implement their game plan, and it's a very close fight. And
Yeah,
I prefer
yeah,
Gaethje, but I want you to give your opinion. I gotta shut up.
I think it all depends on which Gaethje we see as well. In his last couple fights, yeah, he has looked like a much more patient fighter, which definitely will help him against Khabib. But if we see the old Gaethje who goes balls to the wall, blitzing, running in, just swinging like a madman, yeah, that makes for a fun fight. But Khabib is going to take you down left and right if you do that. I just think, I mean, everyone's saying that Gaethje has, this great wrestling background, so on and so forth. He only has an 80% takedown defense, which, yeah, that's not horrible, but if you look at his fights, like, who's really trying to take him down? Most of his fights have been, just people beating the ever-living shit out of each other. And so if he only has an 80% takedown defense against guys that really weren't pressuring him that much, I don't think that he's going to be able to stop Khabib, honestly. I think that he'll just be able to take him down, honestly, whenever he wants, like he does with anyone else. Khabib is just a different animal. I actually think that Poirier was more of a better matchup than Gaethje is, honestly. I think that Poirier had more of a submission type game, a ground type game than Gaethje does. So I think more so Poirier was Gaethje, what was a tougher matchup for Khabib than Gaethje is. I think he'll more than likely be able to finish Gaethje in like the third or fourth round. More than likely either via submission or ground and pound, either or. But yeah, I like Khabib a lot. I mean, not to say that I don't like Gaethje, because I definitely do have him in some of my lineups. Like you said, this is a fight that if you're making multiple lineups, I have 20 lineups made, and I have this fight in all 20 lineups. I actually stacked it in one fight, so in one lineup. So, I definitely think that it's one that you want in all your lineups, unless you're making a crazy amount. If you're making 50, 100, 150, okay, yeah, don't throw the main event in one or two. But for the most part, when it comes to cash, I know we've kind of gone back and forth on this a little bit. Is this a fight to stack in cash?
I mean, I'm in
back and forth on it, honestly, just due to the fact that
there's merit for stacking this fight, and there's merit for not stacking this
right.
fight. I think the safer option is to stack it because you're getting the one win. And I think what you really hope for is, Gaethje to go strong and be the dominant one for 2.5, 3 rounds. But then for Khabib in rounds 3 or 2.5 to 3 on to dominate and hopefully get a finish late. So that way Khabib becomes optimal because that way his being at 9.2K, he pays off. But Gaethje got enough volume and everything early on and throughout
Right.
the fight to become well enough where he could almost become optimal on GPP as well, because at 7K or 7,000 in his volume, he throws 7.7 significant strikes.
And that's what he normally, and that's what I'm battling. Like that's what he normally throws. But if you look recently, his last couple fights, he has slowed down a little bit when it comes to
I
the
believe
significant
I
strike.
believe I believe since the Poirier fight, he's throwing right around high fives, I want to say, but still, that's still
Still pretty
volume.
good, but now you're facing a guy who just wants to take you to the ground and maul you like a bear.
The
Um,
one thing I'm going to say about Gaethje is his last fight against Tony Ferguson. He took that fight on 8 days' notice. 8 days. Not much time to train, not much time. He went basically all 5 rounds and he pieced apart Tony. I know when you face a wrestler, it's a different game for cardio wise, but I think his cardio is better than people anticipate.
I don't think that his cardio is bad. I just think that you're facing a different animal. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a difference between having good cardio striking and the guy laying on top of you for 5 rounds.
But the one thing I'll say is, where does every fight start?
Yeah, but they said the same thing about Connor. I
Well,
mean,
no,
they
I don't agree.
think,
I didn't.
guy has great power. The fight has to start on the feet.
No, I was all over Khabib on that
Oh,
fight, and there was
so was I. But at the end of the day, that's the argument that people always make with great strikers against Khabib. His last 3 fights, it's been the same argument against Connor, against Poirier, now against Gaethje. Fight has to start on the feet. Yeah, fight starts on the feet for you know 30 seconds, and then he's on top of you again.
But yeah, but I mean at that same time too, is I was on Khabib in all those fights, and I've been on Khabib almost every single one of his fights. He also obviously had a long layoff at one point too, trying to fight Ferguson during all those time, and they kept getting hurt. But I honestly think Gaethje is just a different animal, and this fight is, I honestly, like, I want to bet it because Gaethje being at
I did
plus
bet
two. Well, I know you bet it for Khabib, but like to me, I think 270 on Gaethje is just disrespectful to Gaethje.
Yeah,
I
I mean, if you want to throw, depending on what your unit size is, if you want to throw 25, $50 on them to, try to make 50 to $100, I wouldn't be necessarily opposed to that. But I definitely think there is still merit in betting on Khabib. Maybe, if you want to bring that juice down a tiny bit, parlaying him with, say, like a Jung or someone like that, just to bring the juice down a tiny bit. But I think that Khabib is a very safe bet.
just one thing, if you for people listening, if you're doing any crazy parlays, if say you Khabib is your anchor, at the end of the night, you almost might want to hedge it. Throw a couple bucks on Gaethje. That way, you're out of the at the end of the night, you're either going to cash a huge parlay with having Khabib in it, or if not, you're getting Gaethje at plus 270, or could be greater by the time if the fight goes off, and just sprinkle a little bit on that. So it's almost guaranteed profit no matter which way the fight goes, and it's just no matter how much the difference
I
is.
think it'll go down a little bit as the fight gets closer, honestly. I know a lot of people think that the line will actually go higher as the fight gets closer. I personally think Gaethje will probably. What did you say he is right now?
Well, what was funny because I was writing the write up for the War Room I broke down the fight. It's probably the biggest breakdown I've ever done for any fight in the War Room ever. For the almost 3 years I've been working at DFI, he, as of when I was writing Khabib is now a minus 290 favorite,
Oh,
and
sorry.
Gaethje was,
Down.
yeah. So money is finally coming towards Gaethje, which
Odds.
I honestly thought money would keep coming on Khabib because of a lot of the casuals and just worldwide influence and how much everybody
Yeah.
loves Khabib. I'm honestly shocked that the money's coming on Gaethje, because I think he's down to a plus 250, which, I mean, it's not a huge swing in dollars, but if it's already this early, as well, when I was doing it at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock when I was writing the write up, By the time tomorrow morning comes, it could be down to plus 200 for Gaethje. You
I,
know,
I think plus 225 is probably right around where Gaethje will end, honestly. I think Khabib could go up a little bit more to like negative 325 range. Um, but I think Gaethje will probably stay right around that negative plus 225 range.
I mean, my personal, if I was making this line, I know it would probably still get hammered, but in my gut, I think this fight should be like a minus 175 to like plus 200, somewhere in that, or, plus that, whatever the equivalent would be.
That would get hammered so hard by Khabib.
I just think this fight, I mean, it would get hammered, but I still think it should be a lot closer than what Connor was, and
Well,
what,
Connor was
uh,
that because it's Connor. Everyone is going to bet on Connor just because it's Connor. Just
but
like
even still, I think,
everyone's going to bet on Connor just because it's Connor.
but I mean, against Khabib was only minus 220, I think, against Dustin Poirier, and I think Gaethje's a tougher fight than Poirier, but I think we've rambled on enough. I think we've been on for an hour and a half right now, which is one of our longest podcasts ever. But I just want to throw a couple of questions out to you, Ryan, because I mean we didn't have any in the chat, but not counting not pricing not being a question, who is your number one fighter on this fight in the slate?
See, I don't have like a true conviction like I did the last time we had a podcast where I had a guy at like 65% and he ended up being like 30% owned or something like that.
I'm honestly shocked you didn't say Khabib as your most confident.
Well, I
Like,
mean,
or
yeah, I am very confident in him, but at the same time, well, I guess, yeah, if you're saying price not matter,
price, the DraftKings pricing doesn't matter. Who do you think is going to be your highest or your favorite and highest scoring fighter on the slate?
Well, yeah, then I already know Khabib is in the most of my lineups. I have him in 65% of my lineups.
And I believe that's about the average of what he'll be in GPPs is roughly 60
More
in that range.
probably around that range.
Who is your favorite underdog? So someone 8K and under.
I mean, if we're going 8K and under, then I'd probably go, Tua. Teresa.
Yeah, well, because 8K is the first not underdog technically, which is...
Yeah. So. Yeah, I mean, if we're going him, I think if we're going 8K and under, I think I have him in the most lineups. After that, it's probably either Rachmanov or Shakova. You can kind of flip a coin on those. I think probably Rachmanov a tiny bit more, but if you need the value.
What biggest favorite you think will bust by either losing or just not putting up points? So I would say anybody like from like Volkov, who's 8.6 to the 9.4. Who do you think is going to be the most likely to bust in that range?
Maverick. Because if she doesn't get the finish, she's scoring maybe 40 points.
I would say mine would probably either be Alvarez or Haas. I would say I'm more confident in Maverick.
Because I think very well that he could get finished. But I think he has a better chance to still score more. Maverick is just absolutely horrible on the feet. So if she did, at least Haas, if he doesn't get the finish, he still strikes good. He still has good takedown. So he can still score fairly good without getting a finish. Maverick is terrible on the feet. If she does not get the finish, she's maybe scoring 50 points tops because she's going to get a decision victory and 20 significant strikes.
Good point. But all right, I think this is going to wrap us up for another episode of the Toehold MMA. Thank you guys for all who listened for the past hour and a half plus. Again, if you aren't a subscriber to DFI and you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to DFI. You get If you use promo code DAVEFRIEND, DAVEFRIND, on DFI, Daily Fantasy Insiders, you'll get 30 days read-only content for all the sports. Make sure you sign up for the all access 30-day read-only. If you haven't done so, subscribe. Hit the like bell, and make sure you get all the notifications for us. Ryan, you got anything you want to plug before we head out of here?
No, that's basically about all. Let's get this money. Remember, guys, lineups lock in about 12 hours, so make sure you guys get up early, get those lineups locked in. You don't want to be left in the cold when you're thinking lineups still lock at 4 or 5, and you're left with a 0-point lineup.
That's true. All right, guys. Good luck. Hopefully, you all have green screens when you wake up, or see it tomorrow afternoon.